We are back discussing Atlanta Season 4, Episode 9, which was titled Andrew Wyeth, Alfred's World, an episode in which we get introduced to Al's safe farm. We also get this mixture of 127 Hours meets The Revenant in this kind of slice of life bottle episode as we say goodbye to Alfred, aka Paper Boi. We got so much to discuss in today's spoiler review, but before we get into it, if you all haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel and make sure you hit that notification bell. That way you can stay up to date with all my Atlanta content. You can also give your boy a follow on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. All those links can be found in the description of this very video. We're speaking of this video, if you had a good time, if you enjoyed my breakdown of this new episode of Atlanta, make sure you hit that thumbs up. It means a lot to me and I appreciate the support. And you can also hit that share button to anyone and everyone you know that loves talking about Atlanta like we do. Hit that share button. But more importantly, let's talk about this second to last episode of Atlanta. Pros, cons, deeper meanings, theories. What did you take away from this episode? And of course, what do we hope to get in Darius's final episode, which we'll talk about at the end of this review? But go ahead and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. So a couple things I want to talk about up top. Number one, as you all may or may not know, I always like to invite you all to join us live every single Sunday after the latest episode of Atlanta at 12 p.m. Central Time. We have a deep dive live discussion, myself and some amazing guests, and we'll be back this coming Sunday, 12 p.m. Central Time. Hope to see you all there. I'm going to leave the link to that stream in the description of this video. But also, I had to bring up, we lost someone earlier this week. I'm referring to Kari Ball, as many of us know him as Takeoff, who was unfortunately shot and killed on November 1st in Houston, Texas. I don't want to get into all the details that's come out in the last few days. It's just a very unfortunate situation, and it's just extremely hard to continue to see black men being killed at such an alarming rate, especially through the lens of the hip-hop industry, especially all the artists we've lost in the last few years. I want to take the time to just say our thoughts and prayers go out to his family, to his friends, and rest in peace to Kari Ball, aka Takeoff.
What'd you call y'all group, man? We the Migos.
So there's no easy way to transition in today's breakdown, but I'm going to do my best here. But I want to start off this review by talking about the performance of Brian Tyree Henry, who plays Alfred, aka Paper Boi. I'm going to play a clip for you all right quick.
That Brian was her first choice, and I was already in the middle of watching Atlanta, and I just was a huge fan of his work. And then when I met him and realized how different he is, I realized that he's like just a Christian Bale chameleon.
First off, I didn't know Jennifer Lawrence watched Atlanta, so shout out to her. But as she said in that particular interview, he is a phenomenal actor, not only from his Atlanta, which we'll talk about him as Alfred, but just seeing his career in the last few years, whether it be working with Barry Jenkins, being in the Spider-Man, Into the Spider-Verse, one of the greatest animated films of all time, making an appearance in Marvel with the Eternals, and even in that interview, he's recently in a film that's available on Apple TV Plus called Causeway, which he was phenomenal in. So he's a phenomenal actor, and in particularly his performance as Alfred, which I'll get into more details at the end of this review. But can we just go ahead, if you're watching this video right now, can you put in the comments the clap emoji or put the trophy? This man deserves all the trophies, all the flowers, all the applause. Fantastic performance in this episode and just collectively throughout the series. Brian Tyree Henry, kudos to you, my man. You're absolutely fantastic. But let's get into the actual episode as we break it all down. Full spoilers ahead. We see Al has taken Soulja Boy's advice and getting himself a safe farm.
I'll be on the way to my safe farm right now.
Safe farm. What? That was safe farm.
As we open the episode with Al in the woods listening to Mystical.
If you ever see me fighting in the forest with a grizzly bear, help the bear! I'm
gonna need a remix of that. Can someone go ahead and make that? If you ever see Al or Paper Boi in the forest or in the woods fighting for his life against a feral hog, help the hog! As we see in this opening sequence, Al doing target practice, which after Crank That Killer and after all the stuff he's been through, the man needs some target practice because he needs to stay safe in these streets. But I couldn't have been the only one that noticed this. So before watching this episode, I did go back and watch Woods because I knew there was going to be some correlation between this episode and Woods. I'm not saying it's the exact same blue hoodie that he wore in that episode, Woods, but I mean, come on, it's the same shade of color, and who's to say he didn't keep that? It's like a kind of a trophy, a reminder of what he went through in that episode. So very nice little Easter egg, little sprinkle there that I appreciate from this episode. But as we see, Earn is trying to reach Al, but he's ignoring his call as well as his unknown number. And I had to go back. I said I watched Woods. I'm thinking to myself, wait, is this maybe the same day or the time of year where he lost his mother? And going back and watching Woods, as you all can see on the screen now, the timestamp in today's episode showed September 17th. And when I went back to look at Woods, that was in the earlier of the year. That was for January, I want to say, as I have on the screen. So unfortunately, it isn't a connection there, but I was like, wait a minute, is it happened to be the same day and time? But it wasn't. But as we see, Al wants to detach himself from the world and live this life on the farm as Mind Playing Tricks on Me plays, which if you're familiar with that song and know the lyrics, is pretty much describing the mental anguish of the life of a gangster, including dealing with symptoms of post-traumatic stress, paranoia, and loneliness. So I don't think there's no mistake of why they're playing that particular song, especially when you look at Al and how he's dealing with stress and paranoia and depression throughout various points of not only this season, but throughout the series. As we go into seeing him, this slice of life, him on this farm, I'm thinking to myself, man, this is like very peaceful. Seeing Al living his farm life and him growing his own marijuana and free of all the city folks and the craziness of Atlanta, what can go wrong, right? Well, he just seems to be living his life. There's nothing that's going to be bothering him, but man, was I wrong as he notices some little critter has made a hole in his door, which leads to him going to town to get some new equipment. As we get introduced to Clyde in this episode, the store clerk,
you find everything okay today, big fella?
as Al can't find a cast iron skillet, which ends up saving his life a little bit later in this episode thanks to Amazon, you'll notice that behind Clyde, he has a big ass sign saying, "We don't call the police," and he has his Confederate clock. I'm thinking to myself, Al, you need to get out of here, bro. You're not welcome here. But I will say, Clyde, based on the interaction they had in this episode, he was very hospitable. So shout out to Clyde in this episode. But we see that Al makes it his mission to not only fix his door, but also get this tractor up and running again as he YouTubes how to fix this tractor. And in comes the Backhoes Ain't Loyal YouTube channel. And it has some of the best kind of one-off side characters of all time. And put my man, how to fix these Backhoes Ain't Loyal. Put him on that list, man. And we all know that's a play on the Chris Brown song that came out years ago. So shout out to him coming through to the clutch, because you can't trust them. They ain't loyal. As we see, we get some foreshadowing in this moment as we get back to these Backhoes ain't being loyal. We see that the wheels weren't secure, and slowly that tractor almost fell on Al. But again, it's pointing us in the direction of what's to come a little bit later. Again, those Backhoes ain't loyal. As it's now nighttime and we see Al hears something in the yard and he sees whatever it is destroy his door yet again, eat his stash, and even leave some poop for good measure. I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute. Is this Clyde poking, messing around with him? Is it someone in town? Is it Crank that killer out for him again? Nah, it ain't none of them. It's something a little bit worse. As we see, Al learns from Clyde the next day that he's got some feral hogs, and you can thank Hernando de Soto for that. And if you all do not know who Hernando de Soto is, he was a Spanish explorer who was known for getting credit for bringing the first hogs to the westward across the Mississippi River in 1541. As Clyde puts Al on game on how to get rid of these hogs, and we see him talking about, he hit him with a predator line. He was like, you got to kill them first before they kill you. And I was just waiting for Arnold to come into the shop and help him out with some weaponry to take out this hog. But as we see here, Al laughs it off as Clyde tells him that the hogs has actually killed a woman not too long ago, which is actually a true story, as you can see on the screen now. Back in 2019, Christine Marie Rollins, a healthcare worker who arrived to work back in 2019 to help her patient, only to unfortunately be attacked by a hog later that morning and losing her life. Not only does the hogs have that connection, but there's also several memes that circulated online not too long ago. Even this year alone, some dude in California put out a post talking about how these hogs destroyed all his property. So you don't want to, I'm not from the South, but I have family from the South, and I've been to the South. You don't want to play with them hogs, y'all. Them feral hogs are no joke. Almost worse than the Crank that killer, if you ask me. But as we see, let's talk about these hogs, man. I also couldn't help but to think of last week's episode with Thomas Washington ending with a Goofy movie and how a pig was going to kill Goofy and Max. And then I got to thinking, wait a minute, Elliot. This is where my mind goes. Are the hogs a metaphor or symbolizing pigs, police officers, and how the police officers are trying to take away Al, being in his business, attacking him, try to kill him? That's where my mind went. I don't know if there's some connections there with the hogs and pigs and police, but that's where my mind went. Let me know if y'all were thinking the same thing in the comments section. But we see Al back at his farm, continuing to work on his tractor as he discovers a dead rat, which is so disgusting seeing that rat. And I'm going to tell y'all right now, ain't no way you catching me putting my hands, my bare hands, on a big ass rat like that. It ain't happening. It is not happening. But as I remember going back to just watching some Al episodes, and particularly New Jazz, and y'all remember he saw that rat on the floor, and I looked it up in that episode. And I'm just going to remind y'all, what does it mean when you find a dead rat? So the message of finding a dead rat is that you need to persevere through the things you're struggling through right now. Push through, work hard, and keep up with that determination to fight the things that you want to believe in. This might be a message you're getting at a particular low point in your lives. So I definitely think that Al, there's some alignment there going on with the what finding a dead rat means and what Al's going through, not only in this episode, but throughout this very season. For example, if you all go back to episode 1 of this season, The Most Atlanta, you remember him having a conversation with Darius in the car about leaving Atlanta.
I swear to God. Where you got to be anyway? The airport. But where you gonna go, dog? You don't like LA? You don't like New York? You don't like nowhere.
Or even when he's looking for something new in the hip-hop industry and he's looking for a YWA. So we've seen these things just connecting to Al throughout this season, of him just searching for things and trying to push through and to be determined to find something new, right? And even going back to the connections of this very episode, current situation and trying to fight for this farm life and by any means necessary. And he has the determination to fix this tractor. So again, I definitely think there's some correlation there. Let me know your thoughts on all those connective tissues that I just pointed out. But Al sets up a trap, like Clyde suggested, to avenge what lost and what was taken from him. And you'll notice that there was a light flickering, and some people commonly associate strange phenomenons as a flickering light as our ancestors watching over us and talking to us. So again, it could just be the house is old, Elliot. It's a flickering light. Where are all these theories coming from? Y'all know how I am. I go down these rabbit holes this episode. I don't think it's coincidence the light was flickering. Now, who's to say the ancestors, his mom, maybe trying to talk to him through the flickering light? Or, you know, since this was a very horror type of episode, maybe it was the previous owner. Maybe the owner before Al got attacked by those same hogs, and the owner's trying to warn him, you need to leave this farm, boy, before you get ate up or tore up like I did. Again, I could be wrong, but let me know your thoughts on the flickering light and what that might have meant, and was it a warning for Al to get the hell out of there? Let's talk about that in the comment section. But also get more foreshadowing when we see Al falling asleep to this documentary about chicks not eating and leading them off of a cliff. How you can connect it to our boy falling later in this episode, especially when you hear the doc say, incredibly, it survives, but it's stunned. Definitely connected to what's going to happen a little bit later in this episode, as the Hog has won round 2 with Paper Boi. Can we take a moment to just show some appreciation for the amazing cinematography in this episode, as we get these beautiful shots of the nature, and we get how they were able to create this atmosphere, and how this episode created this sense of uneasiness and the fearing of what the hell is going to happen to Al. Y'all know I've been on that trip about Al's gonna die. It's just all these signs, blue blood, all this stuff's been leading to him dying. Man, I was fearful. I was on the edge of my seat this entire episode. But I just want to go back to talking about the woods in particular, and what the woods means for our Atlanta characters, and how it all kind of, the location of the woods, no matter where they are in the woods, it's always like a shift in the character's arc, right? Especially when you look at this episode, and we'll talk about that at the end, but just tying the woods to what happened to Al in season 2 with the woods, what happened to most recently in this very season with Earn, going on with Van in the Snipe Up episode. So I definitely appreciate how the show has this kind of reoccurring character arc or character shifting, a new part of their life when they enter the woods. So I really appreciate that callback to when we get into the woods. But I also have to mention, while we're taking these shots of the woods, we have this shot on a white mushroom. And for those who are just kind of curious on what does a mushroom mean, is if you look at mushrooms and it's people's interpretation, especially like spiritually and all that different stuff, when you look up the meaning of a mushroom, you'll find that some people think that it means good luck, longevity, energy, safety, prosperity, rebirth, good or bad transformation, and enlightenment. And I think it's safe to say that all those things I just mentioned, we see Al's experiencing that in this very episode. So again, it could just be a white mushroom, or it could mean what I just went over. Let's talk about it in the comments. But getting back into, after several attempts, Al finally got the tractor to work, and it is just something to see Al on this tractor being happy as can be, especially when we consider all the solo outings that he's had in this series. It was just so great to see him happy, and to see the way Brian Tyree Henry played the joyfulness of Al getting that tractor to work. And listen, man, I think we can all relate to that moment in life where life sometimes, a lot of the times for some people, kicks us in the ass, whether it's stuff at work, at home, in our personal lives. And when we get that moment when you finally figured it out, life back in the ass, and say, you're not going to beat me today, and celebrate, it was just a moment that I really appreciated. On top of, there were so many needle drops in this episode. When we have, as Roland plays, it fits so perfectly in this scene. As you'll notice that Al is wearing his Wesley Snipes Nino Brown shirt, which is obviously a reference to Nino Brown last week, and we'll talk about Wesley Snipes in this episode. But again, just a happy moment that unfortunately was cut a little bit short, as we see Al's tractor is caught on the edge like those chicks in the documentary as he attempts to push it, which I'm like, Al, come on, bro. You're strong. You fought a hog in this episode, but you're not going to push this thing back on the road. You think he's fast, though, from the Eternals, but he unfortunately doesn't push it up the road. But as we talked about the foreshadowing, the tractor falls on him. As we see in the scene here, he's bloodied up. His foot is caught in the tractor. And as I mentioned, this is kind of his 127 hours moment. He's trying to pull his foot out of the tractor, which he eventually does, but he wounds his foot. And we see him crawling back home. He gets a little moment that he thinks he's going to get help. He's calling out to the Amazon worker who doesn't hear him because she has her headphones on. Oh, that moment, I'm like, this is it. You'll see this man die right now, man. They put him through so much stuff, man. It's just Al, this always gets put through it. But we have to talk about it, right? So obviously we see him at this point. He's kind of beaten up. He's given up. He's kind of defeated at this moment, right? And we have him struggling as he's sitting down, looking across the water there at his home, at his piece. And I want to take a moment to talk about, okay, this shot, what it means to the title of this episode, which was Andrew Wyeth in Alfred's World. For you all that do not know, Andrew Wyeth was an American visual artist, primarily a realist painter. Now, in 1948, he created Christine's World. The woman in that painting is Anna Christina Olsen, who suffered from a muscular disorder, which meant that she had not been able to walk since she was about 30 years old. Now, Christina was firmly against using a wheelchair, so she would crawl everywhere. And Wyeth was inspired to create this painting when he saw her crawling across a field while he was watching from his window at his house. Now, if you connect that to what's going on with Al in this episode, wanting to separate himself from the world like Anna and do things on his own, and like Anna, he finds himself crawling as we get him crawling across the field. So that's kind of the correlation of what the title means, what this episode is kind of symbolizing within that painting. What a beautiful way that Atlanta kind of tied that together. But as we see, Al makes it back home alone, and it's now dark time, and the worst has yet to come as he sees two hogs right in front of him, and one smells blood and attacks Al, and we get one of the most intense moments of this entire series. As we watch Al fighting for his life, fighting for everything, his land, every moment that has led to this, as he grabs that skillet and eventually kills that hog. Kudos to the production team. I think it was a mixture of practicality of creating that hog and a little bit of visual effects. And I'm just going to put it out there. I've seen some of you all mention in the comments. I'm 100% down with this. Give Donald Glover and Hiro the director a horror movie, because those individuals know how to create tension, fear, anxiety. Get Jordan Peele in the mix, you might have a masterpiece on your hands. That scene was absolutely fantastic. But speaking about fantastic, you'll also notice that the light flickered on the house as somewhat of a way of saying that he won. It's a bit of a victory for Al. As we see, Ern calls him again, but this time Al answers the phone. In the switch up from Brian Tyree Henry, the switch up for Al almost literally dying to now answering the phone as cool and calm, as collected as can be.
Yo.
Hey, what's up, man?
Chilling, man. Chilling.
That was just on another level, man. But I want to go back to a little connection there and going back to the Woods episode. If you all remember in the Woods episode, there's a little bit of correlation there because in that Wood episode, it's funny that Earn was trying to get Al to sign some documents then, and we now seeing him doing the same thing in this very episode.
Yeah, I'm okay.
A chance to look over those forms yet? They need them to be signed by Wednesday.
Nope.
Okay, just
Yeah.
Hey, what's up, man? The lawyer sent over that contract. It looks okay. I still have some questions about the dates, though.
As we wrap up this episode, it's now the next morning, and Al is making bacon. For a minute there, y'all, I'm thinking to myself, yo, this man just killed that hog, cut it up, and now is eating it. He's a savage. He's a savage, but no, he is not doing that. But instead, he's eating one of those hog's relatives as he throws the packaging in the trash right next to that damn hog. I love that moment. It was so hilarious. But we see him eating bacon and whiskey, and I love this moment because it put a smile on my face as he's getting a FaceTime call from Earn. And speaking of Earn, I was worried there for a second. The reason why Al wasn't answering his call because he's mad that he's moving to LA. There's some type of beef. There's something that happened off screen. But no, they're all good. It was just so happy to see them at this moment because we've seen the progression in their story. They started off in this bad spot. They've gotten into fights in this season, but now they have this conversation that just put a smile on my heart. And it was a brotherly call. It was a call full of laughter, taking it back and talking about what's going on about black people not being able to get sunburned. They bring up Wesley Snipes and they bring up the pirate leader from Captain Phillips. It was just such a great moment. Again, see them laughing, having a good time, and essentially wrapping up Al's story, which we'll get into here. But I want to go back to a couple things in that conversation. Both of them are preparing to move on to the next phases of their life. We know with Earn and his family going to LA, we know that Al's probably going to go in between having this safe farm and going to Atlanta. So it was just a nice, perfect way to end this episode and end this chapter of this story. And we also get yet another needle drop in this episode. Don't Let the Sun Catch You Crying by the great Ray Charles. And you'll also notice, I want to go back to that call. I think this was kind of like a Donald Glover talking to the audience. As we see on the phone call, there was a line that Earn says,
Like it, you don't have to keep it, you know. Atlanta's not going anywhere, you know.
so is that a message to us fans that he's saying that, listen, we might be going, right? But you have 4 seasons that you can rewatch, and just in case, there's options out there, but just in case you miss Atlanta, you always have home to go to. So you always got Atlanta to go back to. So I don't know if that's a little message from Donald Glover to us as fans. So a nice little moment there. But again, y'all, I want to take a moment to talk about if this is indeed the last time we're going to be kind of seeing Paper Boi. I think he might be in next week's episode, but he's not going to be the focal point, and we'll talk about who that's going to be. But I want to say that Brian Tyree Henry did a phenomenal job in this role. On paper, all pun intended, could have been a very one-note character, but Brian made this a fully developed character. From his solo outings, for example, Barbershop or Woods or New Jazz or even Prank That Killer, I believe that he made it as a rapper and he accomplished his goals and he changed his life and the people that he loves' lives as well. And I believe he's happy and having his farm life. So again, man, shout out to Brian Tyree Henry playing Alfred, aka Paper Boi. Y'all know Darius is my favorite character, but as far as performances and just the best written character, to me, goes to Al. And I would say, and this is no slight towards Lakeith Stanfield, Donald Glover, Zazie Beetz, and all the talented people involved, to me, he's probably the best actor on the show, especially when you look at his resume and his range that he can give us. So again, if you're hearing this review, put the clap emoji, put the flowers emoji, put the trophy emoji, give him all the trophies. He deserves it. What a phenomenal performance as Alfred, aka Paper Boi. So wrapping this thing up, I will say it is bittersweet, man. It's so sad to think about that next week's the finale of the show. And based on, I didn't watch the episode live. I watched it via a screener on today's Friday, and I will say that based on the trailer I've seen from this whole entire season, we know that there's shots missing, and in particular shots of Darius, as you all can see on the screen now. So it's safe to assume that next week Van and Earn and Lottie got their conclosure, they got their ending to their story. Our boy Paper Boi got his ending to his story. it's only right that Darius has his moment to shine. So I'm very excited to see again. He's my favorite character, so I'm very excited to see how they wrap up his story. But what a great episode. I know for some people, and I know this is going to be the criticism, I can hear it now. Why? Why did it end like this? Why couldn't it do this, that, and the other? I am perfectly content about how they ended Alfred's story because that's just Atlanta. It's just how they do things. So neither here nor there. We'll talk more about it on Sunday again, 12 p.m. Central Time. Hope to see you all there. If you are still here at this point of the review, number one, I can't thank you enough for the continued support. Do your boy a favor. Put in the comments right now, hashtag Backhoes ain't loyal. I appreciate the support. Hope you all are staying safe. Again, rest in peace to Takeoff. Again, thank you for you all for watching this review. Just a friendly reminder to like, share, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell. That way you can stay up to date with all my content. As you can see on the screen now, come and join the community. Check out my other reviews for this show, Atlanta. Check out my most recent review. You all be safe, and we'll see you on the next video.